What defines success?
You have to have the mental and physical fortitude for this stuff.
What happens when you get knocked down?
I was grateful when I got fired. I wasn't grateful because I was fired, but I was grateful in every day, and I was grateful when I got fired.
What makes some people radiate?
Do you define yourself by your title? Do you define yourself by the company you work at? Do you define yourself by the amount of money you make? Do you define yourself by whether you have a corporate jet? I define myself, impact.
This is Radiate.
Hi guys, welcome to Radiate, the show where we interview some of the world's most successful people to find out how they work their way to the top. This week, Sallie Krawcheck, CEO of Ellevate, a network that helps thousands of women get ahead in their careers. Before becoming an entrepreneur, Sallie was dubbed one of the last honest voices on Wall Street. She's led firms like Sanford Bernstein, Barney, Citigroup's Wealth Management Unit, and Bank of America's as well. She's spoken out publicly about being fired twice. And in this conversation, Sallie talks about her transition out of Wall Street and what it was like for a woman to succeed in the boys' club. I think you'll enjoy listening to this. Here you go.
You know, one of the things that that I really admire about you, and that that I know academically from reading about your background, but knowing you personally, is that you had the guts to go from, big steady paycheck, huge power on Wall Street, and decide, you know what, I'm going to step out as an entrepreneur. So tell me first off, what was the biggest challenge in that?
Well, which one? Because there are so many. But the challenge, I think, was really the mental process to get from big office, car and driver, corporate jet. Oh,
that's so nice, right?
Do you do that again, or do you do something completely different? And there, I don't know how much you believe in karma, but apparently every once in a while lightning strikes. And I ran Barney, which I adored. I ran Merrill Lynch, which I adored, but I got tumbled out or tossed out of both of them. And Merrill Lynch, I loved it. It was more like running Barney than it wasn't. And it felt like karma sort of said, reboot, try something else. Rather than do the same job again and again, try something else. So when I came out of Merrill and was really thinking about the next job, I had opportunities to go back to big companies. And I thought, I feel like I've had lightning strike me and say, go do something else. And so I spent time digging really deep on what do I love doing? What do I want to do? What impact do I want to have? And really took my time. All the clamoring voices of, you better get back in there. You better get back in there. I really took my time. I even took personality tests and business personality tests, which, at my slightly mature age, felt like, gosh, shouldn't you have done this at the age of 23? But right. What they showed me.
Which one did you take?
Oh, I took them all. I don't know. Name them. Start naming them. I took a whole bunch of them.
Did you discover anything about yourself?
Yes. There were no, oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Right.
But it was more, yep. And what came out of it was on the spectrum of leadership. I was, slammed over on one side in terms of leadership. On the and being a leader. On the spectrum of rule following and enjoying process, I was not quite slammed over to the other side, but I'm not a rule follower. And I took a look at this and said, gosh, no surprise that under certain bosses at certain companies, not following rules and, being on one side of the chart at leadership, it made sense that my personality wouldn't fit particularly well in certain companies, but fits much better as an entrepreneur.
So then when you actually became an entrepreneur and you bought Ellevate, and I've seen, you work and build this up, what was the most surprising thing about suddenly, oh my goodness.
How terrifying it is. I had tens of thousands of people who worked, I don't want to say for me, but worked with me at these big organizations. I slept at night When you're an entrepreneur and you start off, you have 5 people working for you, 8 people working for you, 20 people working for you. You think, what a breeze. I ran these big, important businesses. But there is something that is so deeply personal about being an entrepreneur and looking every individual in the eye every day. It's such a sense of personal responsibility. So, I slept when I ran the big businesses. I didn't sleep in the first couple of years as an entrepreneur. I would wake up at 3:30 in the morning and just, iterate through, this problem, this challenge, this issue.
Because if you're not going to, you're not going to get the money's not going to roll in.
And there's no money.
There's no money. Right.
There's that thing.
At a big company, you can slack off and the paycheck keeps coming.
For sure. And and with the individuals at big companies, you have this quirky person, you have that quirky person, and people sort of fill in where others have flat sides. Mm-hmm. When you have small teams, there's nobody to fill in. And if everybody doesn't fully show up for work every day, the business doesn't get done. And so watching that, business checking account every day, and some days, at the beginning of the network, there's some days, I don't think there were days. Yes, there were days. There were days we had zero revenue. So I won a lot of them, but oh no, we're never going to earn revenue again ever.
Right.
Ever. Oh, you laugh.
And then the next day.
And then you'll have a great day. And then you feel terrific about it. And then the website breaks. And, when you're running Merrill Lynch, there are people who are all over this. When you've got a small company, there's a guy. And by the way, telling the guy to work faster doesn't particularly work very well, right? So you're standing over the guy. In fact, the day that we went to relaunch the network, it had been called 85 Broads. We were relaunching as Ellevate. We had a new website. We were launching a mutual fund. I mean, ta-da! Like huge day. Of course, the website broke. We couldn't roll it out for 8 hours past what we were supposed to do.
Oh my goodness.
And, there was a guy typing away.
And you were like, type faster.
Oh, and the sweat was trickling down my back in between my shoulder blades. Type faster. Can I type for you?
Was that maybe one of your most panicked moments in your career? I mean, you've had such, so many big moments.
There are a lot of moments. So, it's a little hard to beat when I got the call from the Fed during the financial crisis, pulled out of a meeting and said, "Are you seeing a run on your money funds?" I mean, right. That it's a little hard to beat that moment. but
they're all big moments, right?
They're different moments. They're very different moments, but they all will be with me on my deathbed.
Well, right, the collective memory. I talk to other very successful entrepreneurs who say, at the very beginning, one CEO of an investment bank now says, or a boutique bank says, I found myself on the first day, calling multi-million-dollar clients and cleaning the toilet. I mean, that's what, did you have your lick the stamps, clean the toilet moment?
I still do. I edit. I write a lot for the network and the other initiatives, and I edit a lot. I mean, I am putting in commas, I'm putting in semicolons, I'm changing that's to whiches. I mean, so that for me is that, I haven't yet cleaned a toilet bowl, but that for me is my way down in the weeds moment. But you have to tell people entrepreneurialism isn't for everybody. And what investment banking was when I got out of college and Wall Street in the late 80s, entrepreneurialism is today, which everybody wants to do it. Mm-hmm. And they have this view of it being this very sexy thing. I'm going to be in a, brick-walled, office, and I'm going to wear blue jeans, and I'm going to play foosball, and that'll be like 10 minutes, cool. And then I'm going to be a billionaire, right? And, if you go into some of these co-working spaces, you walk around and there are tons of companies you've never heard of before. And you just know many of them you're never going to hear of ever, right? And so you have to have the mental and physical fortitude for this stuff, and everyone doesn't have it.
So how do you have it? I mean, in your darkest moments, I mean, describe to me one of your darkest moments in your career and how did you get out of it?
Well, I am eternally grateful. I've had some dark moments. I mean, getting publicly fired or reorganized, I'm supposed to say. I was reorganized out of 2 jobs. Those are some, there's some moments.
Yeah.
And I've said, I've been quoted it. People are like, what? I've said I was grateful when I got fired. I wasn't grateful because I was fired, but I was grateful in every day. And I was grateful when I got fired. Because,
but not that day, though, Sallie.
Well, but yeah, I mean, it was a tough day. I drank a little bit more wine than I probably should have. But there is an underlying acknowledgement and knowledge that my worst day is better than most of the world's best day. And when you recognize, I'm not on the street, I'm not begging for food, my children can afford to go to school, my cat is healthy. If I've got friends, when you have that, and by the way, both of my kids have had health issues. They're both great right now. But when you go through those things and you say, would I prefer not to have gotten booted out of Bank of America on the front page of, national newspapers? Yes, I would have preferred that. Did not happen. But I'm not begging on the street.
Majority of people do wake up every morning worried that they're either going to get laid off.
I know.
Or they're going to get fired, right? And so you live in fear of that. You've had that happen to you, as you say, publicly twice.
Yeah. Bummer.
And you've come out better than before.
Right.
So what's the secret?
Well, look, and what I would say is even at senior levels, even when you're doing well, I mean, so the Citi firing, I saw it coming a mile away. The CEO and I had a business disagreement. It built up over time.
You saw the writing on the wall.
Oh, I mean, everybody saw that. I mean, the whole company saw the writing on the wall. It was no big surprise.
So when it happened, you knew
when you have that kind of public, disagreement, and there was no way to keep it from being public because it involved all the financial advisors, it's coming. The Bank of America one felt like a random act of violence because the business that I had responsibility for was doing well. It was growing. It might have been the only business there that was growing at the time. It was ahead of plan. Our noses were clean. There were no scandals. And I kept telling the team, I'm not a dumb woman. I knew the CEO was not the one who hired me. He and I were not going out for drinks at night. So I knew I wasn't his best friend. I wasn't in the inner circle. I didn't find out about stuff in a meeting before the meeting. I found out about it in the meeting. You know how that is, right? So I'm not a dumb woman, but I kept telling the team that it's okay. Look, he's got bigger fish to fry. He's got this whole mortgage mess he's working out. He's got this he's working on. Keep our noses clean. Keep our noses clean. Deliver the results. We're going to be fine. And then I got reorganized out, with
that
some
was a
other
shocker.
Folks. It wasn't, right? Because you're not in the inner circle, but you're doing business the right way. And the stunner for me at the time was, look, I grew up, get your A. Get your A, get your head down, study hard, get your A. If you get an A, you're going to be okay.
I can so identify with this.
I think almost every woman can, right? Get your A.
My dad said this to me all the time.
Everything's going to be fine. And then that was sort of the shocker of, what? I'm sorry, we got an A, and and a couple, one other in this day, and then one other a couple of weeks later got reorged out. And that you start to say,
because you're like, I work hard,
Yep.
I'm excelling, what the heck?
And the team was doing great. I mean, we had a great team in place. I had been brought in by Ken Lewis to bring the attrition rate for the financial advisors down. It was very high when I got there. We got it down. And so you sort of, hey, we're doing what we're supposed to do. And then you get that we're going in a different direction. So I understand, how people live in fear of that insecure, sort of have that insecurity about, will my job be there? Because what I saw is it's true, not just for folks who, are underperforming, but increasingly because the economy is changing so much and business is changing so much, it can be true for people who are outperforming.
Coming up, Sallie talks about the challenges of being a woman on Wall Street, including some of the crazy things she dealt with on a daily basis. But first, this. This episode of Radiate is brought to you by ZVIA. What is ZVIA? Well, ZVIA is the zero-calorie, naturally sweetened soda that's clearly different. And we mean clearly. No sugar, no calories, and it's non-GMO project verified, which makes this a cleaner, healthier soda option. ZVIA is available in 15 flavors like cream soda, black cherry, cola, ginger ale, and even good old tonic water. My favorite, cream soda. It's always 0 calories. And remember, it's the holidays, so you can mix ZVIA in your favorite cocktail. If you want some recipe ideas, go to zvia.com/recipes. But also go to zvia.com/podcast because the company is giving away thousands of free 6-packs. You heard that right, free. You can go online, apply, and come home to a surprise soda right on your doorstep. It's random, but it's great. Head to zvia.com/podcast to get your free sample. That's zevia.com/podcast.
You've talked about this before as well, being a woman on Wall Street.
Yes.
Particularly at the time, the numbers have really not changed, the number of women on Wall Street.
Not at all. In fact, they've gone backwards since the financial crisis.
So how did you do it?
How did I do it? Well, that's a long answer. And it was a different answer depending on the time in my career. I mean, early in my career, it was active, let's get rid of the women. And I've said it before.
Really? Let's get rid of them?
Well, let's put it this way. Let me put it this way. I will give you the facts and you can draw the conclusion. I would come in every day and there was a Xerox copy of a male part on my desk. You can guess which part it was. It wasn't a hand. Okay. So
another appendage.
Yeah, it was a part of a man. Let's just say I used the copy machine on a different floor instead of on that floor. I'm like, the client decks. Oh no.
They put it on your desk every day.
Every day. So were they trying to get rid of me or not? But it was a sense and just comments, right? Comments about the clothes and sexual, all kinds of stuff. So that was at a junior level. It was Salomon Brothers. It was the 80s. And so at that point, it was just, my head is down and you're not going to drive me out of here. Sort of the next...
Do you think, by the way, if that happened in this era, would they call it sexual harassment?
Oh, yeah.
And that would be out the,
people
people would be
is,
out the door?
I think it is.
It is sexual
the
harassment.
The question is, how would you figure out who it was, Betty? Just ask him. Anyway,
that would be fine.
Anywho, I think that would be sexual harassment too. Anywho, so and then there was the next stage, which was really what I think of as the first stage of my career, not my job, my career, which was being a research analyst at Bernstein. And I had the good fortune of choosing a firm like Bernstein, which was full on diversity. It wasn't you had to go to Harvard or Princeton or Yale. We as an organization prided ourselves on hiring different people from different backgrounds with different views. And one of the gentlemen who worked there was a taxi driver immediately before he worked there. So working at Bernstein, I accidentally chose a firm that really embraced diversity. But I also accidentally chose a job that was very metrics and results oriented. So I've said, with the research reports that I was doing, if anybody had this gender thing going on or these inherent implicit gender biases that we all have, who is really going to say, I am not reading that woman's research report because she's a woman, right? And she can help me outperform the right. Nobody's going to say that. Or I'm not reading that woman's research report because she did not write it at 3 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. She was at Mommy and Me Sing Along, and she wrote it on a Sunday night. After I refused to read it, I'd reject it. It just didn't happen, right? And so it was very results oriented. Did the stocks that you recommend go up? Did the ones that you didn't recommend go down? Did you get the client votes?
Right.
And so that worked.
It was all on paper.
It was all very quantifiable. And that, particularly in those early years when I had the kids, mattered.
So why do you think, because there has been a lot of progress, right? And now they're talking about we might see the first woman CEO of a Wall Street firm. Why is it still so backwards?
Well, let's just say it's not pipeline, okay? It's not pipeline. Because the pipeline, and if we just wait for the women to come through, we're going to be okay. I had the New York Times call me, I guess it was a year ago, and said, here's the new Wall Street class, and look, it's X% women, third women. So now we're going to start to make some progress. I said, wait a second, it was a third women when I started in the 80s.
Yeah.
So it's not pipeline. I think it's not unusual in periods of crisis for diversity to go backwards. And you'd think it would go forward. You'd think, gosh, the majority is the one who got us in trouble by definition.
Right.
Let's be more diverse. But what actually happens is that the wagons are circled, not in we got to get rid of the people of color, or we got to get rid of the women. But what I saw again and again and again and again and again is, yeah, I know we're supposed to have a slate and it's supposed to be diverse. Fine, we got it. But I have got to trust Joe. Exactly. Joe and I grew up together. Joe's my guy. And what I saw happen is, this is my team. I've worked with him for 20 years. Mm-hmm. We vacation together. Our wives are friends. I can trust Joe. That's what I saw.
And that trickles down. Like, people hire and they surround themselves with people that they're comfortable with. As human nature.
As do I.
As do you, as do everybody else.
And so that's what I saw happening.
So then what would you recommend a young woman, and not necessarily on Wall Street, but just a young woman who's trying to break into a boys' club, whether it's on Wall Street or in tech or some other male-dominated industry? What's your advice?
For all that you and I laughed about the hard work matters. And, results matter. And so, again, what worked for me was, here's the quantification of success. And having that, this is where I have been successful. These are my results. These are the numbers. And really looking for a job that is very quantifiable in that way worked very well for me. So that's one. Number two, network. It struck me not so long ago that every job I've had since business school, maybe ever. So I got my jobs out of college and business school through the college process, through the school process. But everything since then, the board positions I've had, the advisory board positions I've had, have been through my network. I love search people. They've helped me hire people, but they have never gotten me a job. They've never gotten me a job or a board position. And so it's all through the network. And so this idea of having these loose connections, your next business opportunity is much more likely to come from a loose connection than a close connection. Because your friends and you know the same thing. The guy in the office next to you and you know the same thing. It's someone who you see twice a year, right? You run into him at this work event, or you have this quick drink with him, or whatever, who says, I know something completely different from Betty, and Betty should do this, right? And for some reason, particularly young women, when I talk about this, say, well, that's cheating. I want to do this on my own. I don't want to do it through my contacts and connections.
Really? They say that?
They say that. You would be shocked by the number who say that. No, I want to do this the right way. I'm like, well, how do you think the guys are doing it? I don't know if there's anything wrong with using your connections. And the research shows that it's only about their mid-30s as the guys get promoted ahead of them. They say, oh, then, networking is important. So I'm a big fan. In fact, I've laid out before, buying the Ellevate network was because of 9 different connections.
What's been the hardest part about building this business? Has it been the fundraising? Has it been the marketing?
Well, we haven't fundraised, which has been good. I mean, the great thing about it is we've, knock on my head, had a business that has been strong enough that we've had the internally generated funds. Now, that might have kept our growth a little bit lower, but I say that. I mean, it's growing like a weed. So what's been the hardest part? People. It's always people.
Finding the right people.
And putting the right team in place is probably how I would say it.
Okay.
And, there can be volatility in a small company, that if the folks don't all align correctly, then you have to sort of rethink it because you sub-optimize otherwise.
One of the things that I'll put myself in this scenario, and I think a lot of people who reach a certain level They've made it, in a big company, and just like you, or just at a big company, period. They're at like, a major Fortune 500 company, and then they want to strike out on their own. One of the side effects is that half the people you knew don't talk to you anymore.
Well,
right? I mean, that's,
what's your point,
I
Betty?
wish people weren't like that, Sallie, but it's true.
But it's actually even worse if you're reorganized out or fired. I wish it wasn't like that, but it is. I mean, my Christmas card take from Bank of America was down by 96, 97% the year after I left. And the one that actually still sort of hurts me is there was a woman there who I thought very friendly with. And, the day after I got booted out, I called my now former colleagues. Great to work with you, and I remember I got on the phone with this woman and she said to me, I want to keep in touch. And I remember her exact words. Her exact words were, I don't want to just say we're going to keep in touch. I want to really keep in touch. Well, fast forward now 3.5, 4 years. I haven't spoken to her since. I have called her. She hasn't returned my phone calls. And the one that slays me, she won't even accept my LinkedIn request. I'm not sure there's a lower commitment way to keep in touch. Is she scared that somebody over there is going to see we're LinkedIn friends? And
wow.
And people are funny, right? They get embarrassed. They feel bad about it. Their time is limited. And that's why an external network matters, because if things happen at your company, it's just going to be weird. Okay.
To stay in touch with people there. Yeah.
For some of them, not for everyone, but it's going to be weird. And of course, and you've heard it again and again, when you're on your own and when tough things happen, that's when right? This person fades away, but gosh, then there'll be these people who surprise the living daylights out of you, who you felt like you were casual friends with, and they will come through. Here are 4 opportunities today for you. Here is a board role. You know what, Betty? I've thought about what you should do, and here is my advice to you. I mean, it's really
and it's usually
surprising.
Because people have been there before?
No, sometimes not. They just sort of pop
come through.
up. It's fascinating to sort of watch. So my new rule, and look, I get it. When people are the victim of a random act of violence, it's awkward. But my rule is whenever any of my friends or even friendly acquaintances go through a difficult time at work, I reach out to them immediately. And there's, I don't avert my eyes. And I think it's comforting for them. And I think it goes a long way with people.
Because I think, you've been there, and that's a big fear, is that people are dismissed after they've lost their job or they've lost their stature. And I think the higher you go sometimes, the more fearful, maybe the more of that fear becomes bigger, because you were in such a big public, podium, and then suddenly you're nobody.
But it depends. Well,
I mean,
an
alleged no.
I'm sorry, Betty. Excuse me, Betty. Did you say I'm a nobody? Because
an alleged nobody.
This podcast is over. That's the fear. Let the record reflect. I have stormed from the room.
By the way, when that happens to me, Sallie will be like, "Oh, you like being a nobody now, huh?"
Okay. But here's the thing. It really is about how you define yourself. And do you define yourself by your title? Do you define yourself by the company you work at? Do you define yourself by the amount of money you make? Do you define yourself by whether you have a corporate jet? I define myself impact. Impact. Right? I'm on this earth for a limited period of time. What impact do I want to have? And look, earlier in my career, when you're a investment banking analyst, it's hard to have an impact. When you're a research analyst, you can have more. By the way, I remember post 9/11. The day when the markets reopened, and I was at that time running the Bernstein research and trading business, in bed that morning saying, why are we even bothering, right? I mean, this is going on, and we're going to go talk about research?
Right.
Well, the answer was, we are going to go talk about research because these markets are going to be hellacious. And the people who we're talking to are the families out there who are saving for their retirements to live the lives they want to send their kids to college.
And they're scared.
And this matters. And so we are going to go in there today and talk about the stock market, even when our hearts are completely broken, because it matters for them. That's impact, right? And so even when I went on the big jobs, I thought, how can I have an impact? And I'll tell you quite honestly, there are days when I think I'm having more impact here. And so, in this day and age, what is so amazing and fascinating and thrilling and interesting is you can have an impact running a big company. You can have an impact with one voice these days in a way, because of the power of technology and so you never could. So it's, how do you define yourself? What is being a big deal? What does that mean to you? And for me, the couple of things are an impact, because I've had all of these advantages in my life. So now I have to give back, and the other thing is lifelong learning. And that's the part we haven't talked about. I look at my peers who are doing the jobs they've done at a more senior level. God bless them. I love them, right? My learning curve is vertical right now. And it was for years.
Good.
It keeps you awake. I mean, I am awake. Versus for years, my learning curve was pretty horizontal. And that's what I think the karma and the wake-up call was it's time to make it vertical again.
Next week on Radiate, Charlie Rose. We turn the tables on the legendary interviewer to find out the secrets to a magical conversation and what it's like to chronicle a generation of iconic leaders. Thanks for joining us. I'm Betty Lou. If you liked what you heard, please review us on iTunes and find me on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. See you next week on Radiate. Just a reminder that this episode of Radiate was brought to you by ZVIA. ZVIA is the zero-calorie, naturally sweetened soda that's clearly different. It's got no sugar, no calories, and it's non-GMO project verified, which makes this a cleaner, healthier soda option. ZVIA is available in 15 flavors: cream soda, black cherry, cola, of course, ginger ale, and even just plain tonic water. It is always 0 calories, no matter what flavor you choose. And also remember that you can mix it in your favorite cocktail just in time for the holidays. Go to ZVIA.com/podcast because the company is giving away thousands of free 6-packs. Yes, thousands have been won. Who knows? You could come home and you'll see a surprise case of ZVIA soda on your doorstep or in your mailbox. It is random, but it's also pretty cool. Head to ZVIA.com/podcast to get yours. That is ZE.